had their core button.
First, I want to say thank you all for inviting me. I'm Thomas, or TJ Walker. I work in the data governance office with Brent Dukes, if you've worked with him before. The main focus of today is we're going to walk through the NIGHT data standards terminology that was uploaded, and we are talking about where it was uploaded also. So the platform it was uploaded to is Collibra, but we've branded it the Analytics Marketplace. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and kind of walk through what that is and what does it look like, and just some cool features about it as well. So stop me anytime. Just feel free to speak up. I can't see my screen when I share, so feel free to say, hey, I have a question. It does not bother me at all. So feel free to interject at any time. So first, how do we get to this place? So on O2, if we simply remember Marketplace, is the very first featured result at the very top. So if we click on Analytics Marketplace, you'll be prompted with a login, your standard SSO login with your OHSU credentials, which means everybody that has OHSU credentials that can log into our SSO network has access to the Analytics Marketplace. So all of you should be able to log in here. And if you'd like to follow around, feel free to follow around. We're recording the session as well, so feel free to take a dive into this later as well. And then as questions come up, my email address is walketho@ohsu.edu, and reach out anytime. I'm more than happy to do a specific demo for another team or for a specific use case. And throughout these so we launched this product a little bit, I'd say about 15 months ago. And in that time, we've gone from roughly, a handful of users to now within the OHSU, I think we're at right about 1,200 users today, and that's not including the data governance office ourselves. So we've already seen a tremendous amount of growth, a lot of utilization because of how this can be really flexible and useful for documenting many things. And so we have some very standard large types of data here that we've documented, but then we have also very specific type of data like the NIGHT data standards terminology, and also even for research purposes, OMOP. So the OMOP data model is also in here, and we can kind of talk about how we can use this product to kind of even further those initiatives. So as you can see, this is kind of your landing page to start with. It's what we're calling the home portal page. We created this in-house ourselves. So this product is Collibra in the background, but essentially all these things that you'll see on the screens have basically been created by our either from the data governance or from stewards in different information SMEs across the organization that had this information, and we want a central repository to make sure that we all kind of have a single source of truth, more or less. So just to kind of walk through some of the cards on here, we have featured content first. There's a quick Analytics Marketplace intro. So if you'd like to share the Compass training for Analytics Marketplace, it's out there. We also try to feature some new items, predictive models from Peter Graven's team. A big part of where we started with as this project was the glossary. So we have, I think, I'd say almost 1,500 to 2,000 terms and acronyms that relate to all kinds of things within the OHSU institution. So if I needed to know what, for instance, FTE stood for, I could look it up. But then there could also be several different types of FTE, if it's academic FTE, research FTE, and those would also have different descriptions and information about that. We also have reports, and we have KPIs, key performance indicators. We're also adding metrics. So the difference between key performance indicators and metrics is that key performance indicators have a goal set to it. So we can say that research, we want to grow research funding by 10%. That would be the KPI, but the actual metrics might be the actual amount of awards and submissions, the actual accounts, the dollar figures, but the KPI is actually the goal. So to kind of step into one of these, let's just kind of pick the reports piece, because that's a really popular one at OHSU. You land on another kind of portal page, and you can kind of denote the portal pages by these tabs up here. And so there's another kind of what we're calling similar to Amazon's marketplace. So kind of a browse type of feature where we allow the user to not only see all the reports in one list, but they can also kind of browse by these different categories. So they might want to browse by reporting application. They might want to browse by mission or subject area. And so they can also start looking at a more narrow focused accordingly. And then we have some really broad-based topics that kind of cover multiple missions and subject areas like candid or COVID, improving financial performance indicators. And so if we just take one of these as an example, let's say ambulatory. And we'll just pick this 2-day referrals metrics. So on here, this is what we're calling the asset record. So each individual asset has a record, and it gives you some different metadata about that asset. And so this asset is a report, and these are the different attributes or different metadata that's underneath there. So we have description of the report, we have the audience, we have a URL to get to a direct link to that. If you don't have access to it and would like to have access, we actually have created an access request workflow. So that way we've kind of made a centralized area to also make requests, because we also realized people were making requests in several different systems. We have an example ask image, which if there's any sensitive data, we redact that sensitive data in there. And then the cool part about Collibra, I mean, it's already been pretty cool so far, but one of the really amazing features about this is that it creates a bi-directional relationship with related items. And so to kind of break that down, really what that means is we can start creating that this report is belonging to this support team. So this support team is supported, this report is supported by this support team. So if we click on this link, this will actually take us to the support team asset, and that's its own asset in the marketplace. Kind of how I was talking about how the scope of assets can be very wide and broad. It can be a lot of different things. And in this case, it's a support team, and it talks about who that support team is, and also more importantly, all those related reports or different assets in the marketplace that then they support. So this is kind of a one-stop shop for clinical business and intelligence analytics to just go and see what are all of our reports, what is all of our linkages in the marketplace. And so as it gets more advanced, we first got the reports in there. The next step was to then get some technologies. So we relate it to the technology it's built in. So you can see it's business objects. Similarly, we can click on business objects and see a list of what reports are tied to business objects. Just going back really quick. We also see that this uses a key performance indicator, referral 2-day turnaround. So that allows the user to even have some further information about what is this report not only saying, but what is this specific KPI and what is it actually telling us? And so again, it has some more metadata information. So I think you kind of get the idea of what Analytics Marketplace can do. I mean, it's pretty robust. It has a lot of different areas, and I'm just going to cover one other area before we get to more specific.
EJ, can I ask a quick question?
Oh, absolutely.
Sorry, can I just, yeah, no, this is great. I love the reports and the fact that now basically anybody who had within OHSU can access these reports. And I'm guessing it sounds like the specific groups that are generating the reports actually define the type of reports and things that the metrics and whatnot that they want to report out.
Exactly. So that support team is the one submitting this information in this case, and then they are the ones either working with their clients to make sure that it's documented correctly, or they're the business experts themselves, and so they're able to document it all themselves. And so,
Do these,
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm just kind of curious, before this, what, like, for these reports and whatnot, where did the groups actually publish them before?
Yeah, so they all lived in the applications themselves. So like unless you knew uh, who to contact, and a lot of times if you have access, let's say to business objects, for instance, you might only be able to see a slice of what's out there because you
Yeah.
don't see the whole universe of what's available. And so a lot of cases, it was word of mouth. You know, people would have to ask, what's out there, or they'd have to ask their um, developers to kind of give them that list of what's available. And this really kind of builds that synergy that we were hoping for, because we know that there's multiple projects going on. And so if somebody's developing a report, and let's say it's support team A, support team B will now be able to see that and say, oh, we can leverage that and use that in our reporting as well, rather than try to recreate the wheel. So we've already seen some benefits
Great.
through that as well, which is really exciting.
That is great. Thank you. Just, no, this opens up many thoughts on ways to kind of be able to use this as well. Thank you. This is really helpful.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about, is like, this is, if the sky's the limit on what we can do with this. And I think that if there's different projects and ideas that you as a team develop in the next, coming weeks or months, we would love to partner with you, and really you can use me as your kind of dedicated resource to help get that off the ground. Um,
Thank you.
yeah. Another cool feature is we have responsibilities. So a lot of cases, you'll see stakeholders as everybody. Everybody just means that they are able to look at this. It also means that they can, just to back up really quick, they can also leave comments. So if a user has a question, they have comments that they can leave. They can also leave ratings on particular assets, not all assets, but it depends on which assets we can turn that on for. And essentially, we could let people rate it just like it was Amazon. If we get a bunch of low ratings, that would indicate that we need to go contact somebody. Similarly, if we get a comment that somebody needs help, we can then redirect them to that support team or whomever. And the DGO constantly, we have an API that's able to call on this information, and so we have APIs that can pull this data into either Power BI or other applications and use them accordingly. So that's another thing to keep in mind. So just to kind of go back to the home screen really quick to show the last other pieces of data. We have data models, which we call self-service reporting. So you can build your own reporting off of those data models. We have data assets, which are kind of more broadly. These kind of include our reference data, our research data, which includes OMOP. And I will soon add a new line for the night standards and terminology. So let's go ahead and take a look at that and see what that looks like. So right now, it's not published on this page, but it is published in our enterprise. So everybody has access to OHSU Enterprise, and it's under reference data and night data standards terminology. You could also just simply type in night data standards in your search bar, and you'll see it's the very first one on here. It's we have this is important to kind of talk about, is we have different levels of containers in Collibra. We try to get around that by using portal pages, but the containers basically are the smallest level of containing of similar types of information. And so in this case, it looks like a kind of a file folder box. And in this, this is telling us that the night data standards terminology is all contained in this domain, essentially. And it lives underneath the enterprise reference data under OHSU Enterprise. So those are your kind of your breadcrumbs. And so you can kind of click on that from there. and immediately opens up to all of those assets. So currently you have 1,055 different terms, and you have different code sets. You have 10 different code sets that basically combine those values. And so I'll explain what that means here in a second. So in the race code set, so we have several different race values, code values under that code set. So if we look at race, we see that this is what race is defined as. But more importantly, what are the code values that are only acceptable for race? And these would tell you the specific code values that are acceptable for race. So essentially we have Alaskan Native, American Indian, and this becomes a dynamic list that, so if over time, let's say that Latinx becomes a new delineation on here, well then Latinx can be added, and then those relationships will automatically be updated accordingly because it's already a part of this code set. So I think that's kind of the beauty, is if we wanted to then layer this with another asset type, so like let's say that we had protocols, or if we had different, let's say research papers that were coming in and they did use race, well, they could link to this to make sure that they're using the correct race identifiers, the race codes, if you will. To step back, on this page, oh, go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, just to make sure I understand that. So then the protocol itself would have to be on the marketplace to link to this data set, this code set. Is that how that works?
Right. And so we would create a new asset type called protocol, or even night protocol if we want to be more specific. And then we would create these attributes that you would want to, if it's a description, an audience, any other attributes that you want to keep on that. But then you can then relate any of these items to that protocol. So then you would say this code set belongs to, or the protocol belongs to this code set, or vice versa. However you want the wording to be, it's totally up to you. So in this case, this says it's grouped by the Knight Cancer Institute tag. So just to kind of demonstrate what the grouping looks like, we've already used a Knight Cancer Institute tag to group all of your items together. So this is kind of like a similar idea where it could be a protocol. Let's just say this is a protocol. The type is protocol, and then it would relate to any of the code sets or specific values if we want to go down to that level for that protocol.
No, that makes sense. Is there a permission kind of granularity that you can assign to documents that are stored on the marketplace? For example, if it's a protocol and a group only wants to share it within their specific research group, for example, and not with OHSU wide, would that be feasible, I guess?
Yeah, and I think what we would do in that case, so with Knight, it's kind of a special case where not all of it would be enterprise-wide information like most of the rest of the stuff that we're publishing. So what we could do is might assign whomever like a super license and give that person a super access, or we would basically manage it through these workflows. And so that's another cool part of what I haven't really shown yet, is we can also create these custom workflows that really kind of do some automation for us. So in that case, like let's say that you wanted to limit the access to a certain group right off the bat. So like, let's say that this is limited to these group here today, this 6 of us, 7 of us here. We could then create another workflow that says add group member or remove group member. And then you would basically then add that group member or remove that group member. And then it would just go to us, the DGO, to just sign off on it. And then we would get it done for you. And so that way it doesn't waste a license. Because licenses are expensive. Licenses cost, I'd say, roughly around $2,000 to $3,000 a year. So to kind of circumvent that, we use the workflows to allow us to basically get the information that you want done, and then we make sure that it gets done within a day, basically. So you'd say, hey, I want to add this person or persons to this set of data. I would get that email immediately, and I would say, okay, and I would just add it right away. And then I would give you a confirmation email that says, oh, these are the people that have been added. And basically that would be it. And we could do that with any kind of workflow. So again, if it was like updating these information, let's say, we already have a edit request workflow that you could then say, I want to update this description, or I want to add another code value, or whatever the case may be. This is basically your form to just kind of tell us how you want to edit this, and then we as a data governance office do the editing for you.
Great. So everything's kind of read only. However, you can put in your comments and whatnot to be reviewed and potentially edited.
Right. And then to add to that, we also, let's say that you were frequently getting in and out and we're updating things. We can temporarily assign you licenses as well to update things. And basically what that does is it allows you to have a pencil icon. You guys don't have this pencil icon, but essentially we could just give whomever access temporarily to have the pencil icon to edit things dynamically, and then you wouldn't have to go through us. It would just be like a temporary license. We would just give it to you for like 10 or 15 days, and then it would just probably be revoked after that.
Thank you. That really helps on kind of the workflow and the usage and kind of interaction on that.
Yeah, and again, like if you come back and you're like, I kind of forgot how you did that, and you need me to re-explain it, I'm more than happy to come back and do another demo beyond this recording. The other thing I wanted to show here is you have complete customability to what you're viewing here. So right now it says the default view. And so what I'm talking about is you can actually edit what is being displayed in this view here. So you can actually go to this display options, edit fields, and we can then say, well, really, I want to see the description. I want to see the part of code set. I want to see the tag. It's grouped by tag. And you just kind of think about, like, if you go to the asset record page and look at what the verbiage is, you can just then remember that verbiage and then look it up here as well. Or you can just have it open on a second tab. This is another thing that I do, is just have two tabs open. But then essentially now if I hit update and save, you now have a list of not only the name and the asset type, but now you have the description, you have what it's a part of. So if we look at the code values, we know, okay, this one's a part of dose regiment versus this one's a unit of measure. And then if we wanted to layer in more tags, so like let's say that you wanted to get even more advanced with the tags because you wanted to separate some of these out. So maybe these are units of measure that are specific to lab. And so maybe we have a new lab tag that we can create as well. So there's all kinds of ways that we can, again, segment this. If you need to segment it further, that's another option. The other cool thing about this is now that we've got the view the way that we like, we can now export it. So if you export this, you can add characteristics, export. And you don't have to add characteristics, actually. I do that as a habit of just looking at all the data. If you didn't add all the characteristics, all you'd see is what's on the page there. You'll see what I'm going to show you here in a second. So by adding characteristics, you get kind of more of the code in the background. Again, that's not really necessary for you. You just enable editing when you open this. I always like to tell folks my trick is Control T is the hotkey to make a table. Control T, and then you hit OK. And so now you've got a list in Excel with all those items, with all those different delineations, with asset type, with the types of units of measure versus ethnicity. So if I then just needed a list of the ethnicity like we showed, or the race, sorry, because we were talking about race before. Now you've got that, just that granular list that it looks like in the marketplace. So just another cool feature, a way of extracting the data from the marketplace, which is really helpful for a lot of folks. I think beyond that, I think I've kind of demoed some of the workflows. if you end up seeing that you need another workflow built, I just will walk through one thing really quick on that. So back to the home page. So just FYI, I didn't explain this, but let's say that I'm on a record page. If I hit this green Collibra icon up here, it takes you back to the last portal. So this is the last portal I clicked on, and then I can get to the home portal right there. We do have some create asset workflows, and they are found underneath this plus sign. So if you hit the plus sign, I'm going to log out so you can kind of see what it looks like from your perspective. So just 1 second. So you don't see a bunch of stuff that doesn't make sense. Essentially, you hit this plus sign, and that gives you a whole bunch of workflows that we've already created ourselves. So for instance, if you wanted to add a business term or acronym, or if you wanted to add a report to the marketplace or a training, you can do that. Now, if you wanted to then create a workflow like this for adding more night data standards or more protocols, we can do that. So I just wanted to emphasize that this is how it looks. You launch it. Basically, we create the form for you that just has those attributes. So like asset name, asset description, any of the other things that you want, the relationships even. So like in this case, we can relate things right in here, which is wonderful because then you're not having to do all that work in the back end. So then like, for instance, if I was adding another data standard, I can then relate it to another code set. So that way, or relate it to the night data standards, Night Cancer Institute tag or any other tags that we create. And essentially that then creates it. And oops, I must have didn't fill out something. I didn't fill out this stuff. There's some catch-all or some controls built in because we didn't want people to just type in just like one word. So they have to be at least 70 characters on the description, which again is not very long, but it's basically 1 sentence minimum. I thought that was 70. There we go. And I think this has to be filled in with something. Anyway, you get the picture. This hits submit. This then routes through workflow that basically the user's done at that point. The user has nothing more to do. And at that point, the data governance office kicks in and we basically make sure it all gets finished. We will also contact, like, let's say, Sean Goodyear on this one and say like, oh, is this, if it wasn't from your guys' team specifically, we might say, hey, does this from this person make sense? And confirm that with whomever we'd want to confirm that with. So we'd build that process with you as well. Like who's going to be the check and balance on those edits or updates. So I don't have a lot more else to show. I kind of open it up to more questions. If you'd like me to demonstrate some more of the terminology stuff, I'm happy to do that as well. So whatever you'd all like to do.
This is really great. I have one last question. Sorry, and I know others might have some questions too. I think we asked you about this before. I think one thing, and if you showed it, I apologize if I missed it. But the ability to assign tasks to people, like if you, for example, if we want specific groups to review a specific subset of terms or anything like that, like I think you kind of spoke about that earlier.
Yes. So that's something that we haven't done to the general public or to the, I mean, we do it internally, but we can't do that for any other group. So like, let's say that for this case, your team needed to build the workflow so that everybody had a check off, like, so everybody could say, we need at least 4 votes from the 8 of you to say that this needs to move forward. We can do that in the workflow. And so just to kind of demonstrate that, I'm going to do a test workflow in the dev environment. So this is in dev. But let's just walk through one real quick here. So if I was creating workflow, or if this was a workflow for us, let's say. So we'll just fill out this form, something really generic and quick. And this would be reviewed by us, and we'd say this needs to be updated. This is not good enough. If somebody were to do this. Let's just fill some of this out and hit submit. So the first thing you see is on our side, on the data governance side, we automatically get a Teams notification that pops up. We also then get to assign it to a user. And so this could be where the sky's the limit on what we do. So you can then assign it to another user in the group to do the review. So you could say, oh, I want Sean to do this review. And so then we go down and pick Sean from the list. And so now Sean is going to have to be the one that actually does the review. For this case, we'll just pretend that I'm clicking on Sean, but it's actually my name. So now then Sean would get this task that would pop up on his view, and he would also get an email to let him know that he has a task. And so basically it would tell him whatever he needs to do. And so in this case, we have a new KPI. Here's the KPI record, and we need this KPI reviewed by him. And so he can make a decision on whether it needs some changes or is it complete and ready for live. And so in this case, we might say need some changes, which then loops into another email to say, hey, TJ, this needs better descriptions so that there's a record of it. That gets sent, and it's all formally written. So that way, just to kind of show you what that looks like. But we kind of pretty it up so that way it doesn't just look like one line of information. But then once you're complete, you hit the complete button, and then it would either move it to the next task, or we can then move that item. Like let's say that it was a new protocol in this case, we can then move that protocol and automate it into the marketplace so that nobody would actually manually have to do it. It would all just be automated into it being done. And so here's some of the emails that we just talked about. Hello, Thomas, please go to the asset KPI, changes to be made. Hey, TJ, this needs to be better description. Thank you, Data Governance Office. So again, customize the emails the way you want, the notifications. You can customize who gets what actions after the fact. The other cool part, which I think I just briefly mentioned, is you can have a voting mechanism where you have to hit a certain threshold of votes before it can move on to the next thing. So if, let's say that there's a group of 6 people and you need to hit at least 3 people, then that can be built into the system. So also that initial task where we selected a reviewer, it actually went to a group of 6 of us. And then the 6 of us then select who was the individual that would do it. So that's something that you didn't get to see, but 5 other people were basically pinged when I did that. But they know that this is a test because I'm in the dev environment. Anyway, I think that I've shown a lot of information, and I think you can kind of see that it's a great way of like creating those relationships. Really, at the heart of it, it's like how do we then start with these foundational items like you guys did with the terminology, which is great. That's a great foundational thing, and then adding more pieces to it as well as time goes on. I think the last thing, and I know we still have a few extra minutes here, I'm going to jump back because I know some of you might be interested in OMOP. That's another one that we uploaded a while back. But just to kind of show you how this looks and interacts, we have a data model. That's the OMOP data model. But then underneath it, we have the different tables. So this actually goes down to the table level. So then you can say, well, what's in the concept table? So you click on the concept table, it gives you a description. And then it also gives you the columns underneath it as well. So then I could actually say, well, what's the concept ID? And so then I click on the concept ID, it tells you what the concept ID is. Also tells you if it's a primary key, if it's a foreign key. And again, we can do that same exact thing where I can get that whole view, the list view of it, and just extract all this in one OMOP data model view. And so that way you can have it in Excel, you can have all these relationships back and forth. Similarly, you could actually relate these back to like the race one. So if we had a race table in here, you could actually say, well, we need this to be aligned with what we're doing in the night data standards. And so that relationship could be built there. So I just wanted to show you that because I thought the OMOP piece is kind of cool.
That's very cool.
So noodle on this, I know is a lot of information. Bring me back anytime. I'm more than happy to do more talks or demonstrations on technical capabilities. And yeah, any other questions about like how this is doing, or I think if there's no other questions, I got one last.
I have a brief
Please
question.
do.
I apologize that I was about 5 minutes late joining this meeting, but I'm very
Oh,
glad
no
I
worries.
came in to observe. It was a lot of information, and I know I'm going to want to review everything you just shared to go back through it again. Do you have a recording or places that I could go in to kind of refresh? Because all sorts of ideas are coming through my head about how we can connect and use what you just shared. The potential seems enormous. So can you provide some guidance in that way?
Yeah, I think for one, we did record thankfully at the beginning of the session, so I will send the recording out at the end of this session. We also do road shows. So we have a road show, I think, coming up. It's going to be a lot of what I just covered, but if you want like another, like I just need another second run through of this and just to kind of see what I did again, let me pull up my calendar, but I think it's this Wednesday and tomorrow at 10 o'clock. And then I think we'll have it every month, basically. So every month you can go out to Compass and just search, I believe it's called Marketplace Roadshow. And under Compass or under those, it's basically a live training. And so I would just, if you can't find it, let me know and I will point you to that roadshow link.
Thanks. That's great information just to even help with those basics to make sure that I have a feeling many people are going to be keying into what you're empowering everyone to use. So thank you so much.
Well done, thank you. And it was a great question. I think to that end, I also wanted to show you, I think I mentioned a little bit about the APIs and what they're doing in the background. Here's an example of what we're doing with some of those APIs. Like we're pulling in the user information and then we're building these in Power BI basically in the background so we can just quickly see what our user growth is on the platform over each month. We just take a monthly snapshot of the data and then back up that data. So that way we've got that snapshot to look at each month going forward. And then there's other ones where we've built it that are completely, there's no snapshot at all. It's just dynamically pulling it from the API. So let's pull one of those up. So for instance, we kind of briefly talked about the stewardships, how we can actually assign different roles in the marketplace. So like right now, not every asset in the marketplace has a steward. So, but most of them do have a steward or a support team. So an information steward, we can then roll up in the API and see, okay, this information steward is covering 74 items, for instance. And then we can get down to the most granular level of it. Basically, each of these lists gets down to another granular level. So then now we just updated it. So now, Sean, you're in the lead with the most distinct assets and code values. So now you are the information steward for 1,055 code values in the marketplace. And that was just dynamically pulled in this morning. So again, this API is just constantly calling and taking in information, and we don't have to do anything in the background. This is just all being done. So again, if you see the use also to being connecting into another application from this, we can do that as well. Is basically the long story short. So
I think this is absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for being able to kind of just take the lead on this for us, and get this out into the public. So I mean, I think if everyone here is being able to see at least, this is at least how we're able to get all this data and everyone's efforts here, out into the OHSU community at large. So I mean, it's a huge accomplishment. So I mean, obviously, we can just keep building on this now.
That's the beauty of it is it's not we're not tied to any other group in that sense of like, data governance really does kind of sit on top of BIA. And so we're not like only supporting BIA, we're supporting the whole organization, which includes all of your team and everybody here as well. So I just want to echo that commitment that I'm here for you guys. And as this progresses, I'm more than happy to just sit on any kind of meeting. So like, I know this might go on some different tangents and then some subgroups. So please feel free to invite me to those subgroups if you have questions about technical and how does this actually look on the marketplace if we implemented that. So
no, thank you very, very much. Really appreciate it. I think that, you know, with regards to our group now, I mean, I think if everyone can take the opportunity to go through Collibra, look at our terms, how they are, you know, how they've been listed out and things like that. And then, you know, with regards to everyone's, you know, expertise and role within the night, you know, starting to think about what are the stop gaps that we need to fill with regards to the terms and, you know, so strategy for, you know, building out the next set of terms, right? And then obviously if there's anything else that we've seen with these terms that we've developed that maybe we need to tweak as well. So I think if that's something that's, you know, maybe by the next meeting, if we are able, you know, 2 weeks time, kind of start having that discussions. I think that seems like a reasonable strategy forward. I appreciate that.
So
Sure. Having this framework is certainly going to help fulfill that previous ask that I think you all were trying to help kind of get some grounding to figure out how to step forward. And this gives some really nice rungs to cling to so we can be able to respond in a meaningful way. I just really appreciate this. It is complicated, it's complex, but potentially quite beautiful. So thanks for that.
Yeah, and I think I think you said it just really well there of like, it can get complex, but I think if we keep our scope to what we can do in the short term, and then we just kind of build on that, not trying to look at the whole bigger, like what can we do with everything? Like, I know it's good for me to explain like, what are the potential ideas? So that way we get the ideas flowing. But at the same time, I think Sean's absolutely right of like, let's take this one step at a time. And then as they start to bubble up more ideas, that's when we can really kind of, you can bring those ideas back to us, and then we might have some synergies going on in BIA that we might also be able to leverage going on in BIA as well. So I think that's where I think we can make more partnership as this keeps progressing forward.
No, brilliant. Well, thank you again, TJ. I really, really appreciate your time and being able to explain to us. I mean, yeah, I think if you can please provide the recording for us, so that the rest of the team can have a chance to go through it, because I definitely will need to go through it myself for a tutorial. So